Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where we're here to live a life of purpose and to be flourished and fulfilled in all areas of our life. I have a special edition here today. It's Bradley Logan, and he's here to tell us his story. Tell us his story about how he showed up at Earthwaking Village. But first, I want to get some background. Where were you born? Where did you grow up, Bradley?
I was born in Orange County, California. And
Really?
yeah. And I know the similarities there, yeah. But I only lived there till I was 8. So I have, a few stories of my childhood there. But most of them, and then I moved to the desert. I moved to Arizona. My dad was a 20-year Marine vet who retired. He was based in Camp Pendleton, in El Toro there in Orange County. And then my mom was a nurse, a psychiatric nurse. So pusher of prescriptions, basically, right?
Mhm.
In California, the two of them retired and decided to become entrepreneurs. And Arizona was a better place to do that than California. So we moved to Arizona. And then I
Which
lived
part? Which part in Arizona did you move to?
uh, like Phoenix. It's a little town called, I'm in a Glendale, which is right outside of Phoenix.
Okay.
And you feel like you're in Phoenix, but I've lived all over the state of Arizona. I went to uh, undergrad in NAU, which is in Flagstaff. I went to law school in U of A, which is in Tucson. Uh, I lived in Sedona, which is where I was living when I left, and I was up in Page, which is near the border up north. I was getting ready to do a real estate development right before COVID hit. So I've been all over the state. So I think of it this way. I lived in the desert for about 40 years before I moved to the jungle and heaven on earth here in Costa Rica. Yeah.
Wow, what a biblical similarity there,
Oh, it's
in
just
the desert
all
for
over
40 years.
my life. Oh, yeah.
So, how did you hear about Earthwaking Village? Like, what was the first connection?
My first connection was a random chance miracle of God. I was driving by and uh I was in a car with a driving from Dominical back to the valley, which is where I was living, um, the Diamante Valley, the Diamond Valley. And the person I was riding with was like, "Oh, you know what? I need to stop in this place and drop off a package." I'm like, "Okay." So I pulled in and I'm like, "Well, what is this? What is this place?" And I don't even think she knew the name because it was just a Natuga sign out front.
Mhm.
Um, But some friends of mine were building the greenhouse here.
Mm.
And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I just kind of got to see the starting of the greenhouse, the foundation, and just got inspired. And then it wasn't until sometime later that I heard that there was this 508 church here in Costa Rica. And I'm like, well, I'm a 508 church guy. So I got to find out about that. And then boom, I made the connection. It was the same place, and then it just perked my interest because I help create 508 churches for people around the world, and I'm like, well, I want to go back and check it out even more, and so that's kind of how the journey began for me. The introduction of Earthwaking. Yeah, and the first time I came to Costa Rica, I stayed across the street in the Valley of the Horses, which is so crazy. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I was here for like 3 weeks, and I came in and went to Eco Maste, which is a friend of ours, and this first
Mhm.
place my feet touched ground other than the airport. And then 3 days later, I went I stayed at Valley of the Horses for about a week, and then I went to the home farm and stayed for a few weeks. And then I'm like, I'm moving to this place. I just felt a calling. I'd never been here before. I only found out I was coming here 2 weeks before I arrived. And as soon as I touched the earth, I'm like, yeah, I'm being called to move here. So I went back and took me about a year to take care of my business and wrap stuff up there. And then I moved to the Diamante Valley. And then I ended up here, through a little bit of the communication I just shared, but I started coming to a men's group here. And then I was on my way back into Babylon, deep into Babylon. I was supposed to be going to Burning Man with my partner, and we packed up in the car, like on the way to the airport, had the tickets, like all the stuff, and something just said we had been here the week before for the Remember experience.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, it was the Remember experience. I think it was Remember experience, the second one. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it just feels like we should be going to Earthwaking instead of Burning Man. And so we like quickly put in the application like the day before we were supposed to leave, and got accepted, and for a 7-day stay. And I never left. Well, I mean, I did leave, but we moved in and I stayed for a long time.
Tell us about that journey at first. How was that journey at first?
Oh, geez. Not so delightful. I mean, it was like bringing up all kinds of stuff in me, and it was a purification process is what it was. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a meant to be thing. Like, I'm like, after being here a little bit and getting connected with the people and the mission and what Earthwaking is all about, I'm like, this is a godsend. And which is why, God diverted me from going to Burning Man. I've never been to Burning Man. I'm not a big festival guy, but my daughter was going. My daughter was there actually. And I thought, maybe I should go. uh, and have that experience, if you will. And then God said, no, I got a better plan. And then that's how I ended up here. But when I got here, like it was my Burning Man experience. Like my old man burned up in the 6 months or so that I was here, because I was just confronted with things that I'm not confronted with in Babylon. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never had a boss. Like I've always done my own thing. And so I know the mother of my children had shared with me once, like nobody ever tells you what to do. Like, and I was in accountability groups, I was deep in the church circles and all this stuff, but I was kind of the leader of all this stuff, right? So like I didn't get true confrontation, like, and I was skilled, as an attorney. If somebody starts to confront me, I could justify and argue my way out of it, or like, and so it was an epiphany when that was shared with me, like you think you are being held accountable, or you think you've set all these tools up to be accountable, but the reality is it was a people-friendly accountability. It wasn't real accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And so that shit doesn't work at Earthwaking Village. Like, so I think for the first time I'm really experiencing truly being held accountable to my own word, where I couldn't say a thing and then wiggle out of it, or justify why it didn't occur the way that I said it was going to occur. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And so that's what my experience was like, is like being confronted with my own uh, reality of not being all that I pretended to be or said I was, or not being able to, you know, what's the word, like dismiss other people's observations of my way of being. Um, and so, yeah, that's what the experience was like in the beginning.
Yeah. So, what would you say was the most difficult thing to have confronted?
Well, that I was a people pleaser. Like I didn't see myself as a people pleaser at all. Like I'm like, no, I'm a nice guy who knows how to navigate life, without using force. Um, but I did not see that I withheld from others in the name of being a nice guy instead of confronting dysfunction. And that included within myself, right? So like I could justify my dysfunctions by mainly being a nice guy, like I got 90%, whatever the magic number was in my head, like 90% of my life and the way I show up is right on target. So, that little sliver that's dysfunctional just doesn't need to be dealt with. And what that really is, what I learned is it's like, no, that's the cancer. And it doesn't just, I say 10% now. I used to tell that story and say, well, 5% of my life was dysfunctional, but no, it pervades everything in your life, in my life. And this is what I wasn't acknowledging or open to, and then to be confronted with that here and not be able to get out from underneath it, no matter how hard I tried. Uh, that was difficult. And when I say difficult, it was difficult for me to own. Like I still didn't want to own it. I'm being told this, it's being reflected to me, it's being shown to me, and I'm just like, yeah, like I just didn't want to own it. Like,
Why do you think that was? Like, why didn't you want to own it? What was so hard about it?
uh, because yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever reflected on that. Like, so there's this sense of, I mean, I knew who I was in God, right? So I knew I was a child of God. I knew I was on the right path. I was taking actions that I should be doing. And then there's that sliver of stuff that I just didn't want to let go of. I want to hold on to. I hadn't completely surrendered. And there was an essence of losing me to give up some of those preferences or attachment to the preferences
What were they? What were those preferences?
um like I still like to party, I guess would be, one way to say it, like once in a while, like just let loose, like I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't addicted to drugs, but I would like to go get in a circle and have a few drinks and let loose. But, when I let loose in, sexually dysfunctional ways. I would let loose in, uh, uh, well, I wasn't representing the kingdom of God, at all times. And there was that resistance inside me, like, to fully lay down my life and fully be on purpose all the time. It was different. It was just, there was something in me that made it difficult for me to let go and let loose of the things in Babylon that I wanted to hold on to, like, so what was difficult was like just acknowledging that, like, I would just justify it. No, it's okay. Most time I'm right on target. And,
Mhm.
and so it was just, yeah, it was just that, I think, running through me that like, can't you see all the good stuff? Like, why you got to focus on the negative stuff? Like I just want to, yeah, we all got our thing. I'm going to hold on to my thing, like this. It was just ego
Yeah.
resist.
Yeah, and people don't understand, like, people watching this, like, they cover up so much of the mess that they don't see that that's actually the reason why there's a message. Like, so, like, saying that, just even saying that now, can you specify some of the mess that you went through for people that watch this, that people that see this know that they have an opportunity and that they're loved and that their message is it's okay, like to own it, why it's so important to own it. So can you
Yeah, I would
share that?
be, I would be honored to share that because, I mentioned earlier in my life in the desert when I was pretending, to be committed to God, and I was running Christian, I used to hold a weekly meeting in my office, in the boardroom of my office for Christian business owners. And we would come together and we would talk about, okay, what does it mean to operate a business, for God, or under God's laws and rules. And yet I had that little hidden sliver of my life, which was sexually dysfunctional, like where, I would go to, the massage parlors, or, well, I mean, massage, it's called massage, but I was using this for sexual pleasures, and it was a secret. Like, so I'm here with these other Christian guys following God, who are all talking about well, some of them would talk about, addictions to pornography, or, you know, uh, cheating on their taxes. It's kind of funny because, a good Christian is supposed to pay tax, or at least that's the way Babylon teaches it, right? And I have
Mhm.
a whole nother perspective on that now, but, we were talking about the things that we thought we were supposed to do to be honorable to God. And yet what I found is a lot of the people in the accountability group, me was the leader, would hide. I would talk about the stuff that I felt safe talking about, but I would hide the thing that was really keeping me small and keeping me disconnected and keeping me from operating from a pure place of integrity before God.
Why did you keep it a secret to them?
Because I wanted to keep the sin. I wanted to keep doing that thing, and I knew if I confessed it, like it would stop. And I had an attachment to, you know, I just, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I had an attachment to this desire that, and I had desire. So back to your point, why it's so important to confess these things and get them out is because when you keep something a secret, it feeds your demon. I mean, it's like, that's where the demons live. That's where the darkness is. And it gets fed. And like a cancer, it starts as a little, which is what, just a deformed cell in your body. If you don't deal with it, it starts to spread and it takes over everything else. So that's exactly what happened eventually. I mean, I lived my life that way uh, for about 10 years in my marriage to the mother of my three children. And I lived that way for 10 years. I had, looked like this big Christian, respectable, perfect, great marriage to to the outside world. And, I was doing all the things, looking good. I had this facade. And yet I was, secretly had an affair and would go to massage parlors quite regularly for the entire 10 years of the first 10 years of my marriage before it came into the light. And then, of course, recovering from cancer that's grown that deep and that long is not an easy process. And so, yeah, that blew up my relationship. I mean, well, for 4 years, we were together, but not together. I mean, you know, I think spent $70,000 on marriage counseling and, trying to work through the stuff. But the mother of my children could never, well, yeah, part of it was she couldn't get past. I mean, how could she trust me again? Like that's for me to have covered that up for that long and pretended to be this other guy for that long, that just broke her spirit so deeply that, um, yeah, it just, I don't think she still has recovered from it. And it's 15 years later, like, um, so that's why it's important when the stuff comes up that people confess what's going on and be real and not just covered up. I used to just say, oh, like every time I would go partake in the sin, afterwards I'd be like, oh, that was the last time. Okay, that was the last time. I'm going back to my accountability group. I'm gonna confess. I'm gonna get it clean. And then I just wouldn't. And I know if I had, it would have stopped, but I didn't. And so this is why it's important to share the stuff and get it out in the open where it can be dealt with and examined in the light, not in the dark. You can't fix things in the dark.
Yeah,
Imagine trying to fix anything in the dark.
you can't. You have to bring it to the light. Like, yeah. And it brings up you're not punished for your sin, you're punished by your sin.
Amen.
And so it's like, if you want to, it literally goes away. It completely goes away once you
When you bring it
decide,
to the
when you decide to stop doing it. But that's the whole thing. People haven't decided. They continue to try to justify and try to get good enough, and they can never be good enough. And it's constant. That belief system is so ingrained in us. They're like, I'll never be good enough, so why not? Like YOLO kind of situation. And
yeah.
it's
Yeah. And then it has you run counterintuitive. So now that trying to be good enough, you're doing more than your best, right? Like you're now
yeah.
trying to I was trying to make up for what I was doing in the dark, in the light, right?
Oh yeah, then the spiritual ego comes on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
the spiritual ego. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And so I just want to share too that your wife ended up coming to a remember experience.
Yeah.
and same with your daughter, and there's been a lot of healing inside of your family. Can you share a little bit about that and how the impact has been on you with that situation?
Oh, it's just it's glorious. I mean, I didn't think, we would ever get to a place where there was mutual respect, like where she could see that I have changed. And I'm still not sure that she believes that fully, but I know that this coming to Earthwaking Village and coming to listen to what happens here and realizing, what I voluntarily put myself into to deal with this stuff gave her more hope than that, $70,000 worth of marriage counseling we were going through, you know, um, in a weekend or, in a 4-day event. I mean, it's such a powerful experience what happens and the way that Earthwaking brings awareness to these things, these perceptions of the mind, the tricks of the ego are uncovered and revealed here in such a powerful way. And so, yeah, and again, like when I came here, much like when I said I arrived in Costa Rica and I felt the calling, like when I came to Earthwaking Village and I knew what it actually was, I instantly felt that same calling. It was like, okay, well, this is the place to be to complete that journey I've been on, that 40 years of wandering around in the desert looking for the promised land, like it just resonated. And I answered that, I listened to that, and I'm so, so incredibly grateful for where that journey has taken me. Like you said, to have brought my daughter out of that world because she followed her dad into the world of sexual dysfunction. Um, and now she's free from that as well. And I know that her mom now sees that, and my daughter just shared with me yesterday in a conversation. She's like, we were talking about her mom and whether or not we thought she would come back to the next, and her brother and her sister. Uh, my other
Oh,
my other two children, by the way, they don't really speak to me. I mean, my son does, but we don't have a relationship, if you will. And in
yeah.
my August Rose, who's my oldest daughter, her sister, who's the middle child, hasn't spoken to me in about 5 years. And but she's thinking to come to visit her sister. I just learned she's getting her passport. And so August Rose is trying to line it all up where the whole family can be here for their Remember experience. So we're, not attached to that outcome, but we're holding space for that to occur.
Yeah.
But my point was that she shared with me that her mom said to August Rose, like, you're the only three of my children that, I don't have to worry about. And that's, because she came here, she sees where she lives, she knows what she's up to, she sees what she's doing with her life, she knows she's following Christ. And that's just not true for the other two. And so, yeah, it's just an amazing encouragement because her mom also knows that, we're living in the same village and we're co-creating together, talking about divine law on a daily basis. And so her mom's encouraged by that. And so I think, she's resisting this pull to encourage the other two kids to come, but we'll see what happens. God's got that all in control. It's never under our timing. Hey,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so true. So I want to kind of rewind back a little bit because there's a really powerful piece inside of this story that you have, and it was when you had left the village, because you had decided to leave here at one point, and then you came back. So can you share that journey of what happened prior to you leaving and why you made the choice to leave, and then you'd went back into Babylon for quite some time, and then the journey back? Can you take us through that?
Well, when I came here, I came with my partner, Michaela. And as soon as we got here, she got baptized after. So she had never picked up a Bible, didn't know anything about God, other than the little bit I had started to dribble and share with her when we were living in the Diamante Valley together. And and she got baptized at the conclusion of the Remember experience. So that was like a few weeks before we diverted from going to Burning Man and we came to the village. And the second we got here, like all hell broke loose. And that purification process started. And I mean, like literally, like uh, the demons inside of her started to come alive, and she actually, you know, want to, well, threatened and was trying to kill me. When we went from here, we went back to, we just moved in, and we went back to the valley. Uh, we said we still had a place there. We had two places there, and we were dealing with getting some of that stuff, and yeah, and like she just like lost it one night and literally tried to kill me. And so when we came back to the village, I'm like, like I can't, I don't feel, I'm not gonna, I want another place to live. We were living in the same place. I'm like, I need my own space. Like this is not, something's not right here. And so, and then when I moved out, then I don't know if like in her mind is like, okay, well, the relationship's over. Like, that's not what I was saying. I was just like, like we need some separation. But like from that point forward, she just acted like, well, we don't have a relationship. And I felt, God chose this relationship. Like you can't unchoose it, but she did. And so, I'm chasing her around kind of like for 6 months here in the village. And then she started pursuing another guy in the village, and then left. And then she got herself in trouble. Like she broke her integrity and wouldn't clean it up and deal with that stuff. And so she had to leave the village. She chose to leave the village by her actions, I should say. And then and I'm still holding hope for this relationship. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, well, hmm. And I made a choice. I mean, it was a difficult choice, but I'm like, okay, do I stay here and wait and see, or do I pursue? Do I take hands in the matter into my own hands, which is what I chose to do. So I left the village to get reconnected with her again, and uh, and that didn't work outside the village. uh, And then I had a calling to go back to Babylon to talk about what I teach about, and it felt resonant and right. This is with John Bush,
Mhm.
um, who the village was also co-creating with, and so I just followed the calling, and it was an amazing experience. My experience in Babylon was not bad, but I mean, when I say it wasn't bad, like I was picking up the lessons, I was staying connected, I was still, tied into the village. I'm still going through the visionary program. I was still, tied to the teachings and things like this. So it wasn't like, I forsake the village. I just went to, but yeah, I just went on my own journey,
Yeah.
and I can see now how it was a divine journey. Like my time back in Sedona brought abundance that I was able to bring back to the village, and I knew I would come back. I just, like I had this sense, like I knew it was not a forever exit. It was just a journey that I felt the calling to go on. And so when the time was right, I did come back. Well, okay, and so I was still, having this connection, even though I knew it wasn't working. I mean, but I still had this connection in my spirit uh, that Michaela was like, like we're meant to be together, or there wasn't the end of our story. This is what I felt, but it also was not going well. And so, in a prayer session with Tammy and Chris and through the Holy Spirit, they're like, like you need to just cut it off. Like you're not doing her any good. You're not doing yourself any good. You need to just cut it off. And so I did. I actually had a ticket to come back to Costa Rica, and I was going to connect with Michaela instead of coming straight into the village
Yeah.
and try and work some stuff out, on our own. And I had shared that, or actually, I think Michaela shared that with you, and then you brought the light on that, and then I have this conversation with Tammy and Chris, and they're like, this is just not this is not a good idea. You're not following God, following that plan. And so I listened to that, and I cut it off. And so then that triggered Michaela going on this journey of getting, yeah, she went to the United States, and I came back here. And
Yeah.
so to a healing place, a place that brought her deeper healing. And I came back here and came back to the village and uh, started cleaning up the stuff that got on me when I was in Babylon. And yeah, now we're both back in the village and we're co-creating. I mean, we're not in a romantic relationship of any sort right now, but we're still on that journey. I mean, I still feel this this potentiality that she is the chosen one for me, and I think she feels that too. But you know, we're not like listening to our flesh, or we're not reacting to the fleshly pull. We're going through a process and following
Purifying.
God and have our focus there and letting God lead what may happen between us on that journey. But yeah, that's why I left, was to follow my flesh, and I returned to follow God. So
Wow. What a journey. That is
yeah, it's been
incredible. Yeah.
intense. It's been
Yeah,
intense.
and I want to acknowledge you for the staying in the light, staying open with your relationship with Michaela this round. You know, it's not like the absence of the things that we all have in nature. We all have two things that live inside of us, you know, and you guys are constantly bringing it forward and bringing it to the family and sharing all these things, all the struggles that we go through about how the flesh tries to pull us, you know, but the more that we're able to have a community that shares and can see it, you know, we can climb through it. And then once, like, it's, and it all stems from decisions. I know I can hear your decision on following God rather than your flesh this time, you know, and same with Michaela. You know, she's like, the next man that holds my hand is going to be my divine partner. And she knows that, and you can feel it, but
Yeah,
she's still got the pull in ways, but she's also bringing it to the
yeah,
light and just bringing it forward. And there's also a an on purpose podcast with Michaela's story. So if you want to see that, it's also inside of the links that are below that you can check out the videos on this channel. But Bradley, wow, you know. So can you share a little bit about how the journey is now inside of the village, like present moment for you?
yeah. Well, it's just crystal clear that God is blessing and on honoring my decisions to follow Him and do it His way and instead of my way. And uh, you know, the abundance is flowing through me uh, to our family here, and you know, the message that I teach about. So, you know, I came out of Babylon as an attorney and licensed, you know, I had several professional licenses, and I was deeply connected to the matrix and making money in the matrix. And, you know, I let all that go, similar to John's story. Like, I mean, I can't, every time he talks, it just blows me away. It's like we're two peas in a pod walking the story. Like, in 2015, which is the same time he got his epiphany, and is when my start started, when I started to see the world a different way, and God revealed to me what the matrix licenses and registration in the public school system, the medical system, and the insurance program, and all that stuff was not beneficial. It's not the thing to obtain. It's not the thing to pursue. It's actually limiting your knowledge and dumbing down your understanding of the spiritual realms, right? That's why they push pharmaceuticals on us, because you can't be on pharmaceuticals and be enlightened and be connected to God, be connected to your source of life and heal your body the way God intended your body to be healed. We have the ability to do all that inside of us. And yet we go to these professionals that were programmed by the program. I mean, that's what the universities are. They program us to run the public program and not stand in and under God's laws, natural law, permaculture principles, right? And so the process I've been on is refining that message, and you know, and hearing John's teachings and the way he channels spirit, the way he channels God's laws. And then it's refining the message I give to people, which is helping them come out of Babylon. So what I'm up to now, and what my gift is to our family here in the village, is uh, explaining and coaching people on how, once they have the knowledge that Babylon is Babylon. I mean, that's first, right? You got to understand you're a slave
Yeah.
before you can undo your slavery. much like the children of God wandering around under Babylonian rule. They start to step out of the king, they start to step towards their freedom, and they want to go back because, being a slave is all they knew, and that's all they're, and so that's who I am now in the modern day Babylon, which is the government who puts control over God's children and pushes poison in the arms and covers up the glory of God. I mean, how ironic is this? Like, well, let's just put a mask over the glory of God, which is the children of God's face, right? And so stepping away from all that now and having the deep understanding of how the licensed world works, which is licenses and registrations, is when we voluntarily plug ourselves in to the matrix, to Babylon. We make these agreements, most of us unknowingly, but when people wake up from that and they're like, yeah, okay, wow, now what do I do? Well, then we've got a system that we program. I mean, it's a new program. We reprogram the mind back to the original program, which is the way God designed it. And we teach divine law, man-made, and then you can operate under God's laws and not the man-made laws, right? This is what Jesus taught all of his children. The only people that he rallied against were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which were the politicians and the religious leaders and the lawyers and the scribes and the rule makers of the day, who he said, you're stacking all kinds of laws on top of my Father's laws. You're hypocrites, and get away from me, right? And so that is so clear in my system now, and I can see the story of my life and the licenses that I held, and being a homeowners association attorney, which is how I got started in the practice of law, like, has now led me to be able to assist people in stepping out of the matrix traps and the licenses and repurpose their assets, which is a term, by the way, to keep what you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating for yourself, stewarding God's resources, and then you classify them as an asset and you register it and you license it and all that nonsense. And now you're working for Pharaoh. You're working for the slave master. And when you're ready to stop that, then we're like a coach to help people to bring their assets out of Babylon and repurpose them in God's kingdom in the new earth. And so that's the channel, the box I hold here in our village at Earthwaking. And yeah, and God is blessing that. And we're helping people free their minds from the slavery mentality and then their assets from Babylon and bring them into the new earth where they can be put to use, stewarding Pachamama, stewarding the earth the way that God intended, growing food, right? I'm looking out my window right here, and it's a nursery, and right behind that is a soil center where we're turning shit into fertilization, where we can take the seeds, right? See, all God's teachings and principles in the Bible use nature, Mother Nature, as an example of the nurturing nature of God, right? And so we get in right alignment with the Father and the Mother, so the Father, God, and then the Mother, the feminine aspect of God, which is Mother Nature, which nourishes the children of God. And we're on that journey together. And I have a profound understanding of how all that works. And I share it with people that are ready to come out of Babylon. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I would say, the last month has been I mean, I came into the village, right? And I had that picture in my mind and I wanted to go. And then they're like, whoa, clean up your shit first. And then we'll see about that, right? And I didn't want to clean up my shit first. And that's why it took, about a year. But I finally laid it down and submitted and went on that journey. And now the fruits of that seed that was planted a year ago are starting to blossom and and come forth. And so
I just want to highlight that real quick because it's so profound what you just stated right there. That Earthwaking literally waits for you, holds a space for you to be able to get the shit out, to purify you and allow it all without judgment, with love, with the container to have it come out. There might be some judgment from some people, but that too is also held in the container with what's being established here.
Well, and I think of it as that's part of the shit, right? Like,
Yeah. And
so
it helps other people get this because we're all one. We're all the same.
yeah,
We're all in the body of Christ. If it's in one of us, it's in all of us. So all them are getting healed too, And so it's just this space for people to come into their wholeness, to come into their aliveness, and then be able to share the good news that hey, look at what Jesus did. Like I'm now able to be someone that can represent the kingdom.
yeah.
And so like just the time and the space, and I just want to give gratitude and thanks for you deciding to do that journey. Not a lot of people do that journey. Not a lot of people go through that fire, that purification process, and you're one of them. You're one of the, and you continue to do it. It's not like it's a one and done thing. It's a continuous daily thing that we do here. So I just thank you for being on this journey. Thank you for seeing what it is and deciding to do that daily. It's powerful.
Well, you're very welcome. You're so worth it. And yeah. And I think so again, well, you're telling us you're speaking those words and it popped back into my mind again. Well, there's the permaculture principle in action again, right? So
Mhm.
where do we put the seeds? The
And
seeds start in the shit, in the fertilization, right? And then it grows and it never ends. You're constantly pruning that tree as it's producing fruit, right? Like we look out here, it's mango season coming online here. And, to prune the mango trees is beneficial for the tree and for the fruit it produces. That's just an ongoing process in the patterns of our Father and our mother, Mother Nature, if you will. So
yeah,
when we look for these things, the permaculture principles describe God. I mean, it's God's natural law. And that's all we talk about when I say helping people exit Babylon, is we just say, well, natural consequences is natural law. It's God's laws, and we follow them instead of trying to make up a bunch of nonsense, which is
yeah,
what the Matrix does. Yeah,
yeah. All for control, all for,
yeah.
control and greed and
And
yeah.
to keep the sheep, to keep all those slaves serving the few that have some wisdom. Well, I'm not gonna call it wisdom, but like they have some knowledge about all these things, and they want to
They're
keep
using the
themselves.
principles. They're using those.
Well, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so
And then they try and tell everybody else, no, use these principles, and they're dumbed down and they're minimal, and it's a
mhm,
program that they're keeping us from. Yeah.
yeah. So how can people reach you? How can people get a hold of you, Bradley?
Yeah, so I've got a nice clean something that once again, I had a system in the past, but through what happens here at Earthwaking, we assist people, right, in their abundance and creating their own abundance channels. And so I've refined it, and we've got a nice system for people to contact us, so that we can handle the volume of people that are coming to learn about these things. And you could go to Prosperous Legacy Advisers.com, and that's advisors ERS at the end, because some people it can be spelled ORS too. So it's Prosperous Legacy Advisers.com. And what we're teaching about is how to prosper, not for yourself, but for the next generation. That's the legacy, right? And we say we're advisors because we're assisting people in setting those channels up for themselves. And if you go to that website, well, you'll be asked to become a member of Prosperous Legacy Advisors. And then once you become a member, there's all kinds of ways that you can connect with us, and it's all there on the website. So that's where I tell people to start.
Amazing.
Mhm.
I'll put that link inside of the chat for you folks, and there's going to be additional resources for you to have support on your journey, to contact us, and to live a life that is truly meaningful, truly on purpose, and it's for God. On God for the mission and for our brothers and sisters to come home to Christ, and to be free inside of the spirit and not under the law. So thank you, Bradley. Thank you for joining me today on this beautiful adventure. I'm so grateful that I was able to hear your story even more in depth. So it was beautiful to witness. And
Well, you're welcome. And
yeah,
thank you, Sarah And I want to just acknowledge you for creating this channel. I mean, I'm so excited that you're doing this and giving people a space and a platform to share their stories. and holding the space in the way that you do, that just kind of allows it to flow, and I was going to say, and pull out some of those things from people, but and that's just the way that you show up, you know, as a safe place for people to share their shit. And so that's such a great healing modality, and thank you for holding that space. And yeah, I look forward to seeing all the stories of the people on your On Purpose podcast. So thank
Same.
you. Yeah,
Thanks, Bradley.
you're
Till
so
next time, guys. Ciao.
adios.